Hello, welcome everyone, welcome to our channel. We're on episode 14 and this month is my pick. The book that we're reading today is A Magical Girl Retires by Park Seolyeon. She is a South Korean writer. She's well known in Korea. Her one book that won a literary award was She Who Climbed on the Roof. Magical Girl Retires is being debuted as her first English novel, meaning translated. The person who translated the novel is Anton Her. So what first intrigued me, before we go into the synopsis, I actually saw this book on Instagram. I was like, oh, something that you may like. And I do like manga. My favorite genre, I guess you would say, is shoujo anime, and then also especially I grew up watching the Magical Girls, so that's being Sailor Moon, Cardcaptor Sakura. So when I first saw this book, I thought it was kind of like a fun concept, and that in this world that Cheek Park created is where a magical girl society exists, right? That's kind of, and then this one woman, who seems to be the main character, is down on her luck, right? So she's 29, gonna be 30. She's debating whether or not she wants to commit suicide. So she's reminiscing about her grandfather because he recently passed away, and that's hitting her hard because living in Seoul is so expensive. She accumulated all this debt and she doesn't know how to get out of it. So as she's getting the courage to do the act, a cab stops immediately on top of this highway, and this girl comes out with like a mask, and she's in like this very like costumey outfit and saying like, I've been looking for you, and then pulls her into the car and basically tells her, my name is Ra. I am a magical girl and so are you. And this is basically how the book starts off. And we'll explain more throughout, but like that's kind of like the intrigue that pulls you in. And you see as you go through, like we learn a little bit more about the main character, and I don't think she ever gave the main character a name.
I don't remember.
I double checked and I didn't see it like introduced. So this girl, the Ara, the magical girl, we come to find out that she's a clairvoyant, and she saw in her vision that the main character she has the ultimate magic, which is magic of time. She can control time. And basically what the society, the ultimate, while fighting justice, crime, their main purpose is basically to stop global warming, because global warming is going to end society as we know it. And the purpose of controlling time, because they kind of want to play with it to basically revert back to a time where climate issues were non-existent, so we can kind of prevent the inevitable from happening with being the end of the earth. So at this point of time, the main character is like, I have a purpose. And she kind of begins her training. And it's actually unique because in the story they explain like, while you can be a magical girl, you necessarily don't have to have magic. There's only a few, like for example, Ara, who can be a clairvoyant. There's another one, I believe the head of the Korean Society of Magical Girls, I believe can control weather. And we don't know, we're under the presumption that she can control time. And during this training, because there was this point that for a magical girl, in order to like tap into your inner magic, like all magical girls, like, Sailor Moon, they have their big transformation, and there's usually like a catchphrase that they have. So she had to kind of develop her catchphrase, and once she gets her catchphrase, she would be able to be a magical girl. And as she's suddenly thinking of her incantation, thinking of what her like magical self would be, Ara has another vision. And in that vision, she finds out that actually who she thought was the person of time is actually not, and some other high school girl, and kind of ditches her and leaves her. And then in that process, we also learn that her magical, sometimes in order to transform, you kind of had to have this conduit, whether it's a pen or for Ara, it's like a mirror. Hers is like a credit card that pops up. And it was kind of funny because when they're in the magical society, even like the council people's like, well, that's an interesting choice. And then But as we go on, she kind of stops her when she finds out that she's not the magical girl. She kind of stops her studies because she loses all faith in herself. She lost who she wanted to be. So I'll stop there. Like, what are your general thoughts?
So the things that come to mind are mostly that one, it's like reading a pilot episode for like an anime. Mm-hmm. The plot kind of follows that. It's very rushed. It's very like comic book style too, mm-hmm. or manga, I guess, where, you know, the person's gonna, jump off a bridge and commit suicide, but then this magical figure comes up to her out of nowhere and is like, don't do that because the world needs you, or this agency needs you. And the other thing is I can only fluently speak and read English. So naturally what I consume are things about characters that are from the United States. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of fun to see a story where it's in South Korea, mm-hmm. where the almost all the magical girls that are relevant are in South Korea. Yeah. That's where the headquarters are. That's where the leader of the magical girls put their headquarters. That's where the main character of the story, who gets recruited to be the ultimate magical girl of all time, to end all magical girls, is Korean. So I thought that was funny. So those are my two major takeaways. I liked it. It was a cute little story.
Yeah, it's a short read. It's like, one under 200 pages.
Yeah, well, it was like 160, I think. Yeah. And the pages, like the texture of the pages is nice. Oh, the cover's kind of cool.
But for each chapter, there's like kind of like a manga-esque. Oh, yeah.
So they have some panels from the artist. The story wasn't amazing. The plot is kind of silly, but like if you felt like just reading an episode of an anime, mm-hmm. This to me is perfect.
Yeah.
Because it's just a different form of pretty much the same story. It's very quick. It's circular. So they here's the main character. Here's the problem. Here's some backstory. I think in this one, her grandfather was her caretaker and who imparted his wisdom on her. He owned like a watchmaking business or something like that. Or a jewelry repair shop or something. And she kind of related to the idea of time, being the magical girl of time, because, in her mind, it made perfect sense because, of her history with her grandfather and her grandfather's store and how it taught her to think about time and how that could relate to her abilities. Yeah. But then, of course, we find out that isn't her power and that it was a mistake, which is a hilarious twist. It also makes me think about how, the story kind of goes back and forth between being very light and then very harsh and punishing. I wouldn't say, well, yeah, I guess dark, but like, I think it was a little incongruous to me, Like, I think if it was going for the Sailor Moon kind of style, it kind of had the comedic twists and turns, but then, I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
Sailor Moon is dark. Like, if the more you watch it and like, they all, every time, like, almost, it feels like every season, like, they, in the end, they all die and get reincarnated again.
Yeah,
but,
okay.
So it's fairly dark.
But what I mean is that if you watch that, it's never that, it's an existential plot. Mm-hmm. The world is always going to end. The Sailor Moon, the Sailor Girls or whatever they're called. Scouts. The Sailor Scouts are all going to, perish if the villain wins. But it never feels internal. Like, I've never watched.
I mean, love and justice prevails all. What do you mean? That's what saves the world.
I know.
Is love and justice.
No, but what I'm saying is that I've never watched one of those episodes or of any manga and really identified on a personal level, And this it kind of, attempts to do that a little more, because it's a 29-year-old but who's contemplating suicide because she thinks she's a failure, but she also has the mind, she thinks like a teenager,
I think,
or a middle school age person.
yeah, I agree where there were some instances where the main character had immature ways of dealing with things. Like, for example, like the whole time she could have spoke up. She could have went to the society and learned on herself, but she chose, since her one and only friend is an adult, kind of ditched her because she wasn't it. So she kind of has a lack of self-confidence, which I believe dragged the character down a little bit, because since she didn't believe in herself, she didn't want to do more. And then there was also something like she always carried around with her, like 777, which is supposed to bring good luck. And she would bring that with her on job interviews. And she was, so even though she was a magical girl, she still had to get a job because she had to pay her debts. So she got like a job at like a convenience mart, and basically was like a magical girl, but you know, magical girl got bills to pay, so she had to get a real life job to do that. And then I guess here to continue the story is that Ra does come back and be like, hey, I'm so sorry for ditching you, but we found her. But and then kind of like in anime, all the TV switched on, is like, we found her. And then basically you learn that the magical girl of time was SA'd, along with abused. And they're like, kind of like telling the backstory of the savior. And Ra kind of hints at it, is like she doesn't want anything to do with the magical society girls. Like, she like wants to do her own thing. And in the end, there's like, I guess you can say, a big kiki of all the magical girls from all across the world coming together, basically try to convince this young woman of time to like be on their side and do what they want to do. And that's when everything switches. Like, she halts all time. She's like, you're not gonna tell me what to do. And basically like, where were you when I was getting abused? Like, you're saying that I'm gonna be the savior, but no one ever came to save me. So she kind of creates her revenge, and since she can stop time, anyone with magic she can not control but stop. But we come to find out, our main character, since she didn't really come into her magic, she can freely roam. So this is when she finally gets her vote of confidence. She's like, well, all my friends are now frozen and I'm the only one that can help. So she, I guess in a way, tries to talk to the villain to stop her, and as she's doing it, she can feel like something growing inside of her, and they come to find out she's coming into her magic. And we learn that like, as she's transforming, people are like, what's happening? And then because her debit card like kind of glows as this is all happening. And we come to find out because she kind of passes out, because she released a lot of magic. And then they're like, what happened? How were you able to defeat her? And she's like, I just had a wish. And she's like, I just wanted this all to stop. I wished for her to stop. And come to find out, she's the magical girl of wishes.
Well, it's the idea is that you lose something when you gain something.
Oh yeah, obviously.
And she didn't understand. She wasn't able to connect
her powers.
She wasn't able to connect the idea of the debit card, where what my understanding is that when you use credit, you buy it, but then you still owe. At some point, you have to pay up.
Yeah,
and so at the end, she learns that she can make a wish that'll come true, but then there'll be a heavy cost to it. So she has to reconcile, when it's worth it and when it's not, and it's this incredibly great responsibility, because now other people can be affected adversely by your decisions.
And to trying to combat that, that's when she says like she retires, because the gift is very like, not that it's not a good gift, but it's a gift, as you said, comes at a cost, and she doesn't want to use it if she doesn't have to.
Right. Well, there's also the idea, it plays a lot with like celebrity worship and pop culture and social media in this story. So, she finds out that she can use her fame as a magical girl to go to Magical Girl Con and sell photos and pictures with, sell photos and signature. She can become like a TikTok celebrity and get paid that way. So she kind of, they don't mention that in the story, but it's kind of like
the world that they develop, saying if you're this magical girl, these are the possibilities.
Yeah, or she can now use low stakes wishes to like conjure $5 to like buy ramen if she wants to eat ramen or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing is pretty silly and dumb, but
I would say, yeah, I think it's a comedy because like the intro, when you read the intro, is like a millennial down on her luck. And I kind of like that description because we know millennials, our lives are kind of chaotic. So I kind of like that comparison. And I kind of like, in some ways, there were moments where I related to the main character because like what person or what woman never understood their worth or even contemplated like, hey, am I special? Am I meant for something? And I think everyone kind of contemplates that at one point, no?
Yeah, I agree with that. But it also, I mean, she had the mindset of like a teenager. Yeah. And where it's like she is 29 years old, but she's going to commit suicide because she has a little debt.
It wasn't a little debt.
Yeah, but even a lot of debt, like it's not like catastrophic. Like she's getting by. She it's hard when you lose the one person that's closest to you. I get that. But then, she's 1 minute she says like, the magical girls, it'd be cool if I was one, because that would solve all my problems, but it'll never happen. And then it happens, and then she just geeks out. And then it's like, oh my God, that's the magical girl of blah blah. That's the magical girl of blah blah. I really hope that they like me because, I have no friends. And it's just,
I mean, there's articles out there saying millennials are having a hard time making friends in real life. So I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
but I
don't say it.
I'm not even gonna say millennials. Like just people in general might feel lonelier due to social media, I guess. But I'm just saying that this was not a mature person, and you're rewarding, like Sailor Moon. In Sailor Moon
mm-hmm.
is a very immature.
Well, yeah, because she's like 13, 14 years old.
Right. But she's more developed. She's more developed, I think, than the character in this story.
Maybe if there was, like, if it was a longer book and, like, we kind of dove into the worlds and maybe, like, Sailor Moon had a lot of seasons to grow and evolve.
No, but even the first episode, like, it makes sense for a teenager to be given this gift and need to grow into it.
And a teenager was given the gift, the magical girl of time.
Okay, and she needed to grow into it too. But she was a deeper character because she was someone who went through a very traumatic, serious incident when she was younger, and she was given this power, and she, based on what she was seeing around her and the culture around her, felt unseen and disrespected. And I think that's people would sympathize with that more than a person who just has some debt. And it was due to her, and it was due to the main character's own habits too. Even she's like, I don't know why, I spent because I was bad with money and now I owe a lot and life sucks. Somebody please bail me out.
The author did mention, like, I think it was a critique of how millennials are living in Seoul, and like there is a big thing about debt and trying to get out of it.
I get it. To me, it's just caricaturized and stereotypical. And I know that I say this all the time about stories and books. But it happened really fast. It wasn't developed enough. It's a similar problem that I had with The Silent Patient.
Mm-hmm.
I think Heartstoppers was better.
Mm.
If that makes sense.
Interesting. So how many Kisas would you give this?
I'll give it a 3. I think the enjoyment that I got from it was mostly the idea that the world revolves around Seoul and South Korea in this. And South Korea is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of their film and TV, the culture, the food, all that stuff.
Well, it's because you lived there for a little bit.
I didn't live there.
Okay, you stayed there for extended period of time.
But I was there for a couple months. So yes, I do have a bias towards it, I think. But that was most of the enjoyment I got out of it. These kind of stories don't do much for me. I would much rather watch an episode of Sailor Moon, which I think is a hilarious show.
Well, I gave 3.5 stars because I do agree with Mike where I personally would like it to be a little bit longer to develop the main character a little bit more. But overall, it's a quick, easy read. In a sense, it is lighthearted in like every magical girl scenario where they overcome with love and justice and believe in yourself. So like that what we know of that genre is replicated here.
No, but there's only one character that really has that belief and attitude, and that's the one who who becomes the main character's best friend. All the others, it's kind of like the leader of the magical girl group is like the sergeant he's like you stop the bad guy, but at what cost? We had $500 million worth of damage at the airport, 5 casualties. Put your magical girl badge on my desk by noon because you're out of here. And then there's the other girls at the magical, there's other magical girls who are very serious, let's get in and get out. There's a spat during one of the missions where they bring,
Her transformation.
Yeah, there's a spat during one of the missions where the girl is like, the main character is kind of like a trainee, like shadowing, but it's a very serious and dire situation where an airplane is going to crash into the terminal and kill a lot of people or something like that. And one of them is like, why are you bringing a rookie? We can't afford any screw ups on this mission. You always do this. And then the kind one who, could see the future, and she's the one who befriends and tries to recruit the main character initially. She's like, don't worry about her. She's kind of snobby and has an attitude. But then everyone also simultaneously looks up to each other because one of them is real cool. And it's like, and the main character is kind of thinking like, am I the bad girl? Am I the good girl? Am I the well-dressed one? I'm still trying to figure out my power. Maybe it's something really cool. Am I the sexy one? How do I turn this into a TikTok enterprise? How do I stand out?
She doesn't say that. I don't think the main character never ever wanted to pursue fame. She wanted to pursue purpose, and she never once said anything about social media.
Well,
your conjecture.
She was because she thinks about money.
You're jumping to
No, I'm not, because when she went to the convention, she was looking at all the ways that the magical girls were getting paid. And she mentions how she knows that certain tiers of magical girls get paid more, and how they can be salaried, and how others have to have a side hustle, and how, there's a hierarchy and not all of them get paid, She does mention that.
Yeah, she mentions the hierarchy because that's the author's way of giving us an idea of how this magical girl society is run and how you can succeed within this. But doesn't mean obviously the main.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. The main character essentially for the first 3/4 of the book is thinking how to monetize, if she, how she's going to monetize her situation to get out of her debt. That's her main focus. And I do vaguely remember a part in the story where she's like, I need her to message me back so that I can continue. I can find a way to make real money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
Well, the whole
I
time-
value the friendship, but also like, am I going to lose my employment benefits now that I'm not the magical girl anymore?
Well, because she would lose her employment benefits because she couldn't figure out her power. But throughout the whole job, like, book, she was trying to find a real job because she couldn't figure it out.
I know, but that's my point, is that that was very much on her mind throughout the story. Was this, I want to turn this into a job. Like, the beginning of the story, there was no setup to say like, oh, I just want peace and justice, and I want to, you know, I wish I could affect change in society. It was, I really need money. And then this magical girl comes around and she's like, being a magical girl would be sweet because then I could get rich. You can't deny that.
No, you can't.
But yeah, three stars.
So, I guess it's fairly good between Mike. So, like, I do recommend it if you, again...
3 Kisas.
I give 3.5 Kisas. I do recommend it's a quick read. If you like the magical girl genre and you just want to kind of reminisce, I think it's an interesting read. It's quick and easy, and I totally recommend.
I think that this would be interesting to like a tween, a middle school girl student, a middle school age student, and or like you know, that age, maybe in high school too. Well, maybe
No,
like
the whole point is that the person is 30 years old. What is a teen gonna get?
Well, hold
from
on.
this?
A tween, a teen.
Okay.
Because it's her age being 29 means nothing, because she could have been any age in the story. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I agree with you that the author is, you know, wanted the story to be about a person that age. Mm-hmm. But I think a tween and a teenager would understand it and would identify with the way that the maturity level of the 29-year-old character.
I disagree. I think, I just totally disagree with your generalization. I think the purpose of the book is for an older crowd. It's not for a younger crowd. Also, we may have to take into consideration as well that this book is translated. So maybe in the original language, the tone and the mood of the main character is totally different. Because the whole point of this book is saying that any age you can be a magical girl. And that's why they can mention the older magical girl. And her being essentially 29, 30, like, she too can be a magical girl. Believe in yourself.
Talk to us in the comments and let us know who you agree with.
Let us know in the comments. Not agreeing here.
So who do you think, who would you recommend this book to?
This is a book for individuals who grew up in the magical girl era. Sailor Moon, Card Captors.
So it's a nostalgia.
So this is more of a nostalgia read. And for all the young millennial, at the time when we were young, and now we're 30, who always wanted to be a magical girl. And this is just to show that you can be a magical girl at any age if you believe in yourself. Because even though when you're 30, as the book says, like, or at any age, you never really know your true power. You never know who you are. Even now, people are still finding themselves, like the main character. Was she slightly immature? Maybe, yes, because she never had a boyfriend, she never had a relationship, and she never had a true connection until she came into the society and met this one woman character. So we can go back and forth a while on this, but I think definitely let us know in the comments who you think the book would be for, or like, when did the magical girl enter your life, and how it influenced you.
Help us solve this, please.
I do not agree with Mike's interpretation.
Okay, so if we get more comments, if we get no comments at all, then we just continue this for eternity. But if we get more,
or maybe Tom will be the final determination. Tom, leave a comment.
If we get more comments, more comments saying that you're right than me, then I will admit on the next episode that you were right and I was wrong.
I mean, that should be in general.
And I will do it just because it's turning into a competition. We don't necessarily have to be right or wrong. We could both be right and we could both be wrong in certain ways. But
I mean, sometimes there is a right answer in life, and sometimes you just have to.
Okay, well, I hope that you're as open as I am. But yeah, so you want to lead us out?
So to end our video to a conclusion that is not concluded as of right now, if you please leave a comment below, let us know what you think, like, subscribe, ring that bell so you can be notified of our next video. Again, we upload a video on the first Sunday of every month, so don't miss. And you can see what arguments or disagreements we can get to in the next one. Thank you so much, and see you later.
Thanks, see ya. Also, thanks at Sushi for the gear. I need to learn how to use it.
And again, a magical girl learning how
the magical girl of lighting and gaffing
is it always learning. So have a good one.
Yeah, the magical girl learning. That's better. Yeah. All right. See you next month. Thank you.